What is up, Giants fans? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy's Takes. I'm your host, Tommy G. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. You could also check me out on Twitter at TommyG105. Check out Giants Country YouTube. We got a lot of great content coming this season. Just getting started. Thank you for all the love, support, all the likes, comments, subscribers. Really means the world. Always helps in keeping us to push this thing forward. So again, thank you. And we'll get right into it, just like we always do. Matchup of the 2-1 teams Sunday at MetLife. Bears come in at 2-1 off a thrilling last-second victory over the Texans. Giants come in at a little bit of a different 2-1. Tough loss to Dallas on Monday night. Not going to dig up old wounds with that. It was a close game. Offense had issues scoring. Defense had issues stopping the run. Chicago comes in as a 3.5-point favorite, which is shocking to me. I thought the Giants would have been a favorite here, but is what it is. Even though their offense has struggled, the Bears, the passing offense, their rushing offense has been remarkable. Their rushing offense has put out some historic numbers, especially last week. They rushed for 276 yards. That was the most rushing yards I believe they had since Walter Payton was running back in Chicago. So they could run the ball. Right now, the Bears are top 5 in rushing in yards per carry, 20-plus yard runs, 40-plus yard runs, rushing first downs. Khalil Herbert has been unbelievable. Most Bears fans feel Herbert is the number one running back there, and he's going to get his chance Sunday, looking like Montgomery is going to be out again. And that's their strength. Defensively, the Bears rank second in pass defense, giving up 7.1 yards per carry, but are 30th in the NFL against the run, giving up about 4.7 yards per carry. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Giants couldn't stop the run last week. Bears ran all over the Texans. So that's where the two collide. That's going to be interesting. As far as the Giants, like I said, they came in off a tough loss, but still 2-1, still ahead of schedule with this rebuild. Any Giants fan out there, if the football fairy would have whispered in your ear in August and said, "Hey, by week 4, you'll be 3-1," you'd be like, "Hey," not that they're 3-1 yet, but opportunity to go 3-1. You'd be like, "I'll take that in a heartbeat," and all Giants fans would. But not going to be that easy, especially when you look at the injury front here. And it sounds like a broken record for the Giants every single season. But here you go again. You got Tony, Leo, and Wandale haven't practiced all week, looking like they're not going to play. You got Aaron Robinson still recovering from his surgery. He did some limited work today, still questionable. You got Flott, Ward, both questionable. It's going to be tough, especially for Robinson. He had the surgical procedure, and you got to hope he has the endurance to come back. You got to hope he could protect the wound. You could possibly look at being down. Don't forget Shepard's out for the year. You could be down Shepard, Tony, Wandale, Leo, Robinson. You're hoping a couple of these guys can make it as a game day decision, but tough injuries to overcome, especially this early in the season. We've seen it last year with the Giants early in the season, but that was more on the offensive line when they lost Lemieux, they lost Gates. But again, another early season being tested and challenged by injuries. These injuries are piling up, and Shepard's was a devastating one. That's for the year, possibly for his career. And if you look on the Bears side, not as much going on there. It's looking like their starting running back, David Montgomery, won't play. Didn't play last week. And week 2, he had a great game. I believe it was against Green Bay. Looks like he's going to be out, and Herbert's going to get the lion's share of the carries. You got Roquan Smith is questionable, but he's most likely playing. He had the huge interception at the end of the Texans game to put them in field goal position to win the game. So that was clutch. Other than that, the cornerback Jalen Johnson is a DNP, did not practice. Other than that, the injuries really tilt heavily towards the Giants, and not in a good way. Your wide receiving core is basically shredded now. You don't have Shepard, you don't have Tony, you don't have Wandale. What is it going to be? Are you going to let Slayton finally get some carries? Are you going to try to make a phone call to Alex Bachman? He had a great preseason. What are you going to do? You're in a tough spot now, and you're going against a Bears team that luckily doesn't have a great pass defense. They got, basically not a good defense overall. When you really look at the Bears defense, top to bottom, they're really mediocre. I'll say it in a nice way, middle of the road team. Rookie Kyler Gordon has been getting torched out there. I think he's given up like over 300 yards passing already, which is not good. Though he is a rookie, but look for the Giants to attack him. But again, this injury situation begs to the question of, what do you do? So let's just quickly dive into the wide receiver position. So say you roll into the game with Sills as number one. You have, let's just say, to throw out there, Galladay's number two. You have Richie James number three. And then what? Where do you go from there, right? I mean, this is kind of like a war of attrition. You put Slayton as number four. Or do you call Bachman up, like I said earlier? Really going to be an early test for Brian Dable and the team, because that's tough. Early injuries are tough, but when you get them bunched up in one position group, not easy. And you don't want to have a situation where you walk into this game, lose, and your next two games are in London versus Green Bay, and then at home versus the Ravens, two very difficult teams. You don't want a position where you started 2-0, all of a sudden you're on a 4-game slide. So this is going to be a true test of coaching for Brian Dable and the staff. What they do, they're not going to pick anybody up, really. They're not going to make any moves. Everyone knows the Giants are cash strapped. There's nothing really going to happen there unless it's some type of, crazy trade. So this is it. This is what they're going to run out with. Obviously, Giants are going to try to run the ball with Saquon Barkley. That's going to be their main thing. Both teams, when I was breaking this game down, both teams essentially have similar structured teams. They're both going to try to run the ball. They both have probably two of the worst passing games in the NFL. Justin Fields, when I was looking at his numbers so far for the year, I had to do a triple take. Some of his passing numbers were, did this guy even play the first 2 games of the season, first 3 games? Like, it was just unbelievable. But Daniel Jones, who is further along in his career than Fields, was not far ahead of him. So both these passing offenses struggle. Both their offensive lines struggle to pass block. Both their offensive lines adversely are good run blocking. It's like these teams really mirror themselves. It's very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. They're both going to do the same things. They're both going to try to lean on the running back. Both going to try to get a lead early by running the ball. You're not going to really see, I don't think, a lot of deep passes coming out of this game. Daniel Jones played pretty well for the Giants last week in a loss, but they're still not hitting deep passes. Everything is still checked down, short yardage. When they try to go medium to long yardage, balls were dropped, bobbled, receivers were falling down. So this Giants passing offense is, let's be nice and say it's in its early stages of development, but on a not so nice side, they have trouble passing the ball. I mean, when you look at it, let's get into the matchups, right? Let's go Giants front seven versus the Bears rushing attack. That's what stands out to me on paper. When a team has almost 300 yards rushing the previous week, that's the focus for the opponent's defense, because 300 rushing yards is not easy to attain in the NFL. And they came up short by, I think, 20 something yards, but still remarkable performance. When you really look at it, how do you stop the run, right? Where do you stop the run at? You stop the run up the middle, you stop the run on the edges. Obviously, looking like they're going to be missing Leonard Williams again, which is not a good thing. When you really look at stopping the run, who do you have there? You have 2 young edge rushers in Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau. You have Dexter Lawrence, who is quietly having a very good season. I would call it a bounce back season. And Leonard Williams is a phenomenal defensive lineman, but he's probably not going to play. So does this look more like Dallas, where they hit the edges on us early and then they hit the middle? Never know. We'll see. But the Bears right now are ranked top 5 in the NFL. Like I said, rushing yards per carry, top 20-yard rushes, 40-yard rushes, just to name a few. So their running game is their strength, and they're going to go downhill at the Giants. So if you're the Giants, who got beat up by the Cowboys in the rushing game, gave up 176 yards, almost 6 yards per carry, when the Giants run D played very well, definitely against Tennessee and King Henry over there. And then in week 2 versus Carolina, total about face versus Dallas. What could they do? Fields ran 8 times last week for almost 6 yards per carry. So the Giants' weakness that got exposed last week is going to be put on full display here. So what does it start with? How do you stop this Bears devastating rushing attack for the Giants? How do you not get ran out of your own building? Giants have struggled at home. Giants have struggled in general. This is an important game. Yes, it's a rebuilding team. Yes, it's early in the season. I won't call it a must win, but like I said earlier in the show, you have Green Bay and you have Baltimore coming up next. 2 tough teams, 2 teams that I don't think the Giants right now are built to beat. Maybe they escape with a victory in one of them, but 2 good teams. So you don't want to lose to the Bears and say, okay, we lost 2 in a row. Let's go play the Packers and Ravens. So to stop the run, first thing, stay disciplined. You've seen it on full display in primetime on Monday night. Linebackers with no discipline, no hold discipline, wrong shoulder leverage. The play that stands out to me was Austin Calitro on the long Tony Pollard run. Instead of going into the other gap and forcing his shoulder into the other gap, tries to undercut the offensive lineman, and the Red Sea's parted for Pollard. Cannot do that against a great rushing attack. Have to stay disciplined, stay in your gaps, stay in your zones, read the backside. That stuff is critical here. And those are just basic fundamentals of a defense. I'm confident Wink will have them ready for that, but who knows? I thought he would have them ready for that against Dallas, and Dallas ran the ball at will for the most part. But gap assignments, very important. Shoulder leverage, like I said, play tough. Don't let these guys run downhill on you. Don't let them get a 14-0 lead off of running the ball, because that's it. They can pin their ears back and just keep running it, and the Giants will have to start passing it every down, which you definitely don't want. You've seen in the fourth quarter versus Dallas when the Giants had to pass the majority, was not good. So that's how I think the Giants could stop the Bears' rushing offense. It's not going to be easy, but if you can stop that rushing offense, this Bears offense is one-dimensional. They cannot pass the ball. They can run the ball with their running backs. They can run the ball with their quarterback. But if you could shut down that run and be stout, they're not going to pass the ball successfully. They're just not built that way. They have probably more receiver issues right now than the New York Giants do. They have pretty much nobody at receiver, a bunch of no-name guys, and not knocking them. I'm sure they're great athletes, great players, but nobody, when someone says, hey, who are the best receivers in the NFL or even top 20, would you say so-and-so? So make them pass. Don't let them run downhill. Stay disciplined. Next, we got the Bears front seven against the Giants run game. I mentioned earlier in the show, these two teams really mirror each other. So the Giants are going to try to do the same thing, I believe, that the Bears do. They're going to try to run the ball early and often. They're going to try to set up the pass off the run. Giants have Saquon Barkley, who is having a phenomenal season so far. Had the big run versus Dallas on Monday night. I believe they should have used him more versus Dallas, especially late in the game in the fourth quarter, but they didn't. So Barkley last week had 14 carries, 81 yards, 5 yards per carry, 8 yards per carry. So that's where I say he should have been used more, but whatever, neither here nor there. Daniel Jones was unleashed as a ball carrier last week for the Giants. 9 rushes, 79 yards. He had an 8.8 yard per carry versus Dallas. Unbelievable. But this week you go against a foe in Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith, one of the best linebackers in the NFL, proved it last week. He had 16 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, pass deflection, interception. The interception led to the game-winning field goal, got them in field goal position. Roquan Smith, really just a tremendous player. That's going to be tough for the Giants because their offensive line struggled as well, especially the interior offensive line, getting to the second level, blocking the linebackers. And this is a top flight linebacker. You got to get a hat on him. Got to know where he's at all times, or else he could wreck the running game. He did it last week. 16 tackles, 2 for a loss, and an interception. That's great for a linebacker. So Danny has to do a good job identifying him, getting a hat on him, making sure he doesn't get right up the gut and blow up the run. If they could be successful at that, the Bears don't have a lot outside of Roquan Smith defensively. They've given up about 4.8 yards per carry, so they don't have a great run defense outside of him. And it's going to be a battle of wills in those two matchups. Who could wear out the other first? Who's going to break off that long run, right? Which offensive line is going to wear out the D-line most? That's what it's going to be when it comes to that. I don't think either one of these teams are really going to pass the ball a lot. I don't think either quarterback's going to come out of nowhere and start chucking the ball around the yard and all of a sudden looking amazing and throwing 40-yard passes. Don't think that's going to happen. And that leads to my next matchup, Daniel Jones versus Chicago defense. So Daniel Jones so far this season, some people like it, some people love it, some people hate it. I think it lies somewhere in between. I think he's been mediocre. In the first game, he struggled versus Tennessee a little, had the strip fumble, had the terrible interception in the end zone, but led the team on a scoring drive to essentially win the game. Obviously, Titans missed the field goal to win it, thankfully. Then you have the Carolina game where he played a little better, still missed some receivers, still looked really tentative, still didn't get his eyes downfield, still was overly anticipating the rush, in my opinion. And then you have the Dallas game, which not only do I think that was his best game of the year, I would think that's his best game, I'd say, since probably New Orleans last year. And some may say, wow, that's not saying much. He didn't have a touchdown. He didn't have 200 yards passing. Look, I get it. The Giants passing offense is not set up to succeed. Receivers are hurt. Receivers are dropping balls. Rookie tight ends, rookie right tackle. A lot is on Jones too. I've been outspoken about some of Jones' issues. He's not faultless in this whatsoever, but he's really been surrounded by a terrible supporting cast. So when you look at it, how does he rank? How does he rate going into this game? It's really tough because he's at the bottom of the league in yards per attempt. He averages 6.1 yards per attempt, which is brutal. Only 4 passes of 20 yards plus. That's least in the NFL. And he's been sacked the third most, 13 times. So you start to see the picture here a little bit with this passing offense. They haven't been able to get up off the ground. The offensive line has been a nightmare. The interior of the offensive line has been brutal. Evan Neal, the rookie, has struggled to get his footing. No pun intended. He had a bear of a time against DeMarcus Lawrence last week. Lawrence had 3 sacks against him. I'm not worried about Neal. There's a couple positions in the NFL where I don't really worry about a rookie too early. Tackle is one of them. Quarterback and cornerback. Those are 3 positions that let them play, let them learn. It's trial by baptism out there, and I'm not worried about Neal. What I am worried about is the interior of this offensive line. Whatever combo they want to throw out, whether it's Azudu at guard, Bredesen at guard, Feliciano at center, Glowinski is going to be at right guard. They have struggled. They've struggled to pick up stunts. They've struggled to pick up blitzes. They've struggled to pass off defenders. They've struggled pretty much across the board, and it's been disastrous for this offense. Imagine where this Giants offense could be if that interior offensive line played better and played well and didn't allow jailbreaks, half the snap. So that's going to be interesting. Jones, like I said, has been sacked 13 times. He's pretty athletic. He gets away from pressure. Could have probably been sacked a lot more, upwards of 20 times, honestly, if he didn't get out of there. Adversely, some people will say he's walked himself into sacks, ran himself into sacks. I could see that. I've seen a couple plays like that. Either way, it has to change. This Giants offense cannot function one-dimensionally. I know it's a rebuilding year. You want to go in there Sunday at home. It's the 3rd straight home game. You want to go 2-1 in that stretch, beat Chicago. Got a long trip over the pond to London to play a tough team in the Packers. You're probably going to have to pass the ball. Both teams are going to come. There's going to be a situation in the game. We all know it, where it's going to be a 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. The game's on the line late, and one of these quarterbacks is going to have to make the play. I put my money on Jones over Fields making the play, not necessarily because he's so much better or improved or whatever you want. I just feel like more confident in him making a play. Not liking what I've seen from Fields this season, watching some of the tape. Doesn't throw the ball almost at all, likes to tuck and run. He has a little bit of the Jones-itis with feeling the pressure and pulling the ball down a little bit early. So my money's on Jones there. But leading to that, let's talk about Fields versus the Giants defense. Fields right now is dead last in the NFL, 297 yards passing. Brutal. He's dead last in touchdown to interception rate, has 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Their passing game is non-existent, and he struggled. And it's a miracle they're 2-1. Obviously, last week the running game carried them, and then Roquan Smith's last-second interception. But their passing game is not good, and they very rarely pass it. The funny thing, though, and the interesting part is when they do pass it, they actually average 12.9 yards per reception, which is 4th in the NFL. So while they don't pass it a lot, the few times they do pass it, they have hit on some decent yardage. So something to take a look at. Fields was sacked 5 times last week, 36% pressure rate. And it's weird. It's like really speaking about the same team, whether you're talking about the Giants or the Bears. It's kind of scary, especially for the Giants, where they, probably should be a little bit further along in some areas, especially quarterback, but really identical matchup wise. And like I said, who can run the ball better and whose quarterback can make a play when it matters the most. That's going to be who wins this game. I want to give you a few players to watch also. First one's going to be Dexter Lawrence. With Leonard Williams out, Dexter Lawrence is going to be right in the teeth of that run defense, and he's going to have to put up a game. They didn't look great. The run defense versus Dallas. Dexter did play a solid game. Going to have to do more. If you want to stop this rushing offense, going to have to do more. Next is Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari. It was tough last week, especially for Thibodeau, his first NFL game, versus the Cowboys. They have a good offensive line. Azeez Ojulari is the first time he's played extended minutes. You could tell they kind of wore down as the game went along. Azeez was a little forced in the first half, forced a couple of holdings. This is going to be huge for this Giants defensive line, and that's why I started with those three players: Dexter, Azeez, and Thibodeau. They're going to have to stop this run. The ends are going to have to set the edge, not let Herbert get out into the outside for a big yardage, and Dexter Lawrence in the middle is going to have to clog it up and make some plays. Those are my most important players to watch, all to get on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, it's whoever the center guard combo is. And Evan Neal. I mean, if the Giants have another game like they did Monday night, you're probably not going to win this game. Quarterback's probably not going to come out of the game healthy. They got to play better. Bobby Johnson, the offensive line coach, has to scheme something, has to do something to slow down that rush. There's only so much you could quick pass, rolling pocket, scramble, whatever you want to call it, quick sets. There's only so much you could do that. This line has to hold up, and it starts with the center and the two guards. Obviously, Neal has struggled. I think he's going to get better as the season goes along. Something to keep an eye on. Obviously, Andrew Thomas struggled mightily in his rookie year, and look where Andrew Thomas is now. Huge shout out to him, franchise left tackle, one of the best left tackles in the entire NFL. So I'm not too worried about Neal yet. The center and this guards combo have to play better. The pressure cannot continue to come up in the quarterback's face. The one place quarterbacks hate pressure is right in their face. They can step up around the edge if there's pressure and step up in the pocket. Can't step up into a pocket that's collapsing from the inside. So something to keep an eye on. And Saquon Barkley, utilize him. Run Saquon Barkley. He was ready. He was getting his juices flowing in the Dallas game, and all of a sudden they didn't use him a lot. I get they used him for pass protection, which sadly they had to. That's how bad it was. But you want to see Barkley more. And I think you're going to see a lot of him in this game. Typically plays well against Chicago. And lastly, I'm curious. This is not necessarily a player to watch, but Jalen Smith just picked back up, played for the Giants last season. Curious to see if they try to incorporate Jalen Smith this week. Obviously, last week was tough to do. So I'm curious to see if they can get him in there, get him some snaps. This Giants linebacker core is just, I believe it's the Achilles of the team right now. Kalicha has not played well. Crowder has not played well. McFadden, the rookie, has not played well. He does a great job bursting and getting in the hole, but he's missed a couple tackles. So I would like to see Jalen Smith get in there. If anything, he brings a little bit of veteran leadership experience to that group, which they need tremendously. But curious to see if he gets in there. And, if he does, how does he play? Could he recapture some of that magic he had with Dallas? I thought he played solid last season for the Giants. There's a downhill linebacker, and they need to help. So those are my players to watch for the Giants. Now, prediction time. I'm going to go Giants 20, Bears 17. I think it's going to be a close game. Supposedly it might be some bad weather. Giants have a ton of injuries, especially at wide receiver. I think they're going to pin their ears back and give it to Saquon Barkley. I think Daniel Jones can make a couple of passes, a couple of plays. To who he makes it to, we're not sure yet. Maybe look for Slayton to finally get some meaningful minutes. But I think the Giants do just enough. I think it's a defensive slugfest. I think Fields has a turnover or two. Giants force him to pass. He turns the ball over, and then get ready to travel across the pond at 3-1. Like I said in the beginning of the show, any Giants fan would have been happy to be 3-1 heading into that London game. Still got business to do. I think the Giants win it. I think they do enough. I think their defense holds enough. They win it, and they go to 3-1, and all is peaceful in Giants world. Again, thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Check out Giants Country. We have some awesome stuff cooking over there. Subscribe, hit it up on Twitter, YouTube. Your support always means the world to us. And go Giants. Peace.